The Ministry of Tourism is set to allow investors to construct hotels in tourism sites. We're into the news hour. The ministry
reportedly cancelled more than 75% of hotel bookings by the end of June 2020, 6 months after the pandemic hit the world. During a media briefing, the State Minister of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities, Martin Bahinduka, says that the high cost of accommodation and transportation to tourism sites have remained a major barrier to domestic tourism in Uganda. He therefore underscored the need to allow investors to construct hotels in some of Uganda's tourism areas as a way of promoting domestic tourism.
As a ministry, of course, with our partners, especially UWA, that we are going to open up these protected areas and allow a number of people to go and construct hotels there. The more hotels we have, the lesser the price. The problem with hotels are so expensive because there is high demand and the hotels are few. So we shall open up space so that there is so much accommodation. So you spoiled by choice for yourself. Because this is a sector where we partner with the private sector. So as a ministry, I can assure you, we are going to create the best enabling environment for every player in this sector to make business move smoothly for them. With those few remarks, I want to thank you. I want to congratulate Miss Uganda. And of course, we are going to support you more.
Minister Martin told the media that the ministry is considering a new plan that will turn around the hospitality industry to make it attractive for the locals and reduce the competition for a new service providers.
The only way you can grow a resilient tourism sector is by having the local people or improving the domestic tourism market. Like I said, the reason why Kenyans were not affected so much because of COVID-19 is because in Kenya, the contributors of within the tourism sector, the travelers, are mainly the nationals. Over 60% of people that travel in Kenya go to the hotels, support the sector, are Kenyans. It's only the 30% that are foreigners, which is the opposite in Uganda. In Uganda, we rely on the foreign travelers because they contribute around 60+%. The Ugandans contribute only 30%. So if we changed that and now made the Ugandans travel, we shall have a more resilient sector. So going forward, we are going to aggressively promote domestic tourism, and I want to thank all the partners that are here with us today to make sure that we achieve this going forward.
Countries rely on domestic tourism as a tool to reduce poverty, improve infrastructure, generate employment, and most importantly, to drive economic growth. The activities of domestic tourists create economic impetus as the money spent on domestic tourism feeds back into that particular country's economy, providing itself with more viable and prosperous economy. According to a recent report published by the World Travel and Tourism Council, domestic tourism accounts for 73% of total travel and tourism spending globally in 2018. Thus, it is a key driver of the tourism sector. Bedson Mumbere, Smart 24.
According to a recent report published by the World Travel and Tourism Council, domestic tourism accounts for 73% of total travel and tourism spending globally in 2018. Thus, it's a key driver of the tourism sector. The activities of domestic tourists create economic importance as the money spent on domestic tourism feeds back into that particular country's economy, providing itself with a more viable and prosperous economy. Moving on, police recovers condolence money for Rengo matter victims paid to fake relatives. The Masakasa Region District Police Commander Peter Twala confirms that they have recovered 5.25 million from some of the people who shared the money after disguising as relatives of the deceased. The 5.25 million was part of the condolence money that had been paid to fake relatives of Machete victims that were presented to President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. More of the details.
Police in Lwengo district has recovered 5,250,000 shillings, part of the condolence money that had been paid to fake relatives of Machete victims that were presented to President Yoweri Museveni. The recovered money is part of the 10 million Ugandan shillings which President Museveni gave to each of the 25 families that lost their relatives in Machete attacks that recently occurred in the Masaka sub-region. Peter Twala, the Lwengo District Police Commander, confirms that they have recovered the money from some of the people who shared the money after disguising as relatives of the deceased. He says they recovered 5 million shillings from Detective Sergeant Julius Mbabazi, attached to Lwengo Police Station, who is accused of coordinating the group that swindled condolences meant for the family of Francis Ruhamiakaka one of the people who was killed at Nakatete village in Chiseka sub-county. Twala adds that although Detective Mbabazi is still on the run, he returned 5 million shillings that he had taken and gave police a breakdown of how the swindled money was shared. He says that another 250,000 shillings was recovered from Paul Lukundo, a crime preventer in Lwengo, and that they are still pursuing the other people who took the remaining balance of 4,750,000 Ugandan shillings. Lwengo Resident District Commissioner Herman Sentongo has given the district police commander up to Wednesday to have all the 10 million shillings fully recovered, to have it handed over to the rightful beneficiaries, and arrest all the people named in the fraud.
And sad story in there, and we hope that the Ringo District Police can actually find out the investigations and carve down these particular people who actually took money that does not belong to them. Because this money was put in place for the victims of the deceased, this was to the family of the deceased victims from that particular machete period in Ringo District. And let's move on. As MPs clash over new landlord and tenants bill, as the members of the Physical Infrastructure Committee of Parliament have clashed with the State Minister for Housing regarding the consideration of the Landlord and Tenants Bill 2021. The bill that seeks to regulate the relationship between landlords and tenants was returned to Parliament by President Yoweri Museveni in January.
Structured in a format of an electoral college of sorts.
The members of the Fiscal Infrastructure Committee of Parliament have clashed with the State Minister for Housing regarding the consideration of the Landlord and Tenant Bill 2021. The bill that seeks to regulate the relationship between landlord and tenants was returned to Parliament by President Yoweri Museveni in January, more than a year after it was passed into a law, but it was tabled afresh by the Minister of Lands, Judith Nabakoba, following the guidance by the Speaker of Parliament, Jacob Olanya, that all the returned bill should be reconsidered. The bill provided, among others, that the rent for all premises in Uganda had to be charged in local currency, and that landlords could only evict tenants after securing a court order, and that landlords had to give tenants an eviction notice of 6 months, and lawful evictions were set to attract a penalty of 5 million shillings or jail term of 1 year or both upon conviction. However, President Museveni returned the bill and requested Parliament to look at clauses that prohibit a tenant from being a nuisance to the occupier of the neighboring building, saying this might be hard to enforce given that the fiscal planning entity of local governments has not been able to separate residential areas from business areas. He also wanted an interpretation section between business premises and residential premises, stating that due to the outbreak of COVID-19, Parliament needs to factor in the emerging trend of home offices. Members of the Fiscal Infrastructure Committee of Parliament said that even though this was a returned bill, they had been given only 10 days for its scrutiny, which was practically impossible because they had a number of new issues they needed to add to the bill, including penalties. Some MPs, led by Tororo Women Member of Parliament Sarah Opendi, urged that since the President returned the bill that had been gazetted in 2019 and the Minister presented the bill that was gazetted in 2021, this should be looked at as a new bill. But the State Minister for Housing, Persis Namuganza, reminded the MPs to allow guidelines that were stipulated by the Speaker, where he directed that when it comes to returned bills, they should only look at the clauses that the President complained about. Robert Kasolo, the committee vice chairperson, agreed with the minister, but the MPs insisted that they should consult the Speaker on his early ruling and challenges they have faced. Kasolo says that they have decided to scrutinize both the principal bill, which was gazetted in 2019, and the new bill presented in 2021, and also meet the Speaker, Jacob Olanya, for further guidance.
All right, now Kasolo says they have decided to scrutinize both the principal bill, which was gazetted in 2019, and the new bill presented in 2021, and also to meet the Speaker, Jacob Olanya, for further guidance. Let's say to the international scene, as the World Bank projects Sub-Saharan Africa's economy to expand by 3.3% in 2021. The World Bank has said that the Sub-Saharan Africa's economy is expanded by 3.3% in 2021 after a contraction of 2% in 2020. According to analysis in the Pulse, the World Bank's twice-yearly economic update for the region, the economic recovery will be fueled by elevated commodity prices, relaxation of stringent measures, as well as recovery in global trade. Here are the details.
According to the World Bank, Sub-Saharan Africa's economy is expected to expand by 3.3% in 2021 after a contraction of 2% in 2020. Basing on the World Bank's twice-yearly economic update for the region, the economic recovery will be fueled by elevated commodity prices, relaxation of stringent measures, as well as recovery in global trade. The surge in commodity prices, combined with rapid growth in China in the first half of the year, boosted African exports, says the October 2021 edition of Africa's Pulse. The global lender also projects the region's economic growth for 2022 and 2023 at just below 4%. The findings show that the region's recovery process from the 2020 recession has been affected by a third wave of the pandemic, led by the Delta variant, a more transmissible and virulent strain of COVID-19. The analysis indicates that the rollout of vaccine campaigns in Africa is falling considerably shorter compared with other continents, as about 3.3% of the population is inoculated, compared with more than 50% in advanced economies.
All right, now, as according to the World Bank, Sub-Saharan Africa's economy is expected to expand by 3.3% in 2021 after a contraction of 2% in increase. And if you look at the findings, show that the region's recovery process from 2020 recession has been affected by a third wave of the pandemic, led by the Delta variant, a more transmissible and virulent and strain of COVID-19. Now, the global lender also projects that the region's economic growth for 2022 and 2023 are just below 4%.
Some economists have cast doubt on Boris
Johnson, the UK Prime Minister, has been accused of economically illiterate, of being an economic illiterate, as the bluster amid warning of council tax rises. Now, Boris Johnson has been accused of economically illiterate bluster amid warning of council tax rises. The Prime Minister's conference speech about his vision for a high-wage economic revival has been condemned as an economically illiterate bluster by a leading think tank. Here are the details.
Some economists have cast doubt on Boris Johnson's claim that the UK will have a high-wage economy due to a reduction in the uncontrolled immigration. After he spoke to Tory delegates at his party's conference in Manchester, the Free Market Adam Smith Institute criticized his words as economically illiterate. The organization added that it was reprehensible for him to suggest that asylum seekers make the country poorer. This dog whistle shows that this government does not care about pursuing evidence-based policies. In his remarks, Johnson did not address either the fuel crisis or the £6 billion welfare cut that happened on the same day. Meanwhile, the Institute for Fiscal Studies has warned that council tax could need to rise by as much as 5% annually for the next 3 years to keep up with government spending. Critics said that the UK's wage and productivity challenges cannot be fixed by just cutting immigration.
And if you were to look at the situation that is actually coming up, after he spoke to Tory delegates at his party's conference in Manchester, the Free Market Adam Smith Institute criticized Boris Johnson's words as economically illiterate. The organization added that it was reprehensible for him to suggest the asylum seekers make the country poorer. This dog whistle shows that this government doesn't care about pursuing evidence-based policies. In his remarks, Johnson did not address either the fuel crisis or the £6 billion welfare cut that happened on the same day. Still with the international scene, the COVID-19 cases and deaths continue to decline according to the World Health Organization. WHO says that the number of COVID-19 cases and death has continued to decline globally, with 3.1 million new cases and just over 54,000 new deaths reported over last week. The largest decline in weekly death was reported from Africa, with a 25% decline compared with the previous week. Here are the details.
According to the World Health Organization, the number of COVID-19 cases and deaths has continued to decline globally, with 3.1 million new cases and just over 54,000 new deaths reported over the last week. Compared to the previous week, this represents a 9% decrease in cases, while deaths remained similar, the World Health Organization said in its weekly epidemiological update. The update provides an overview of the global, regional and country-level COVID-19 cases and deaths, highlighting key data and trends, as well as other pertinent epidemiological information concerning the COVID-19 pandemic. During the week of 27 September to 3 October, all regions reported a decline in the number of new cases, apart from Europe, which remained similar to the week before. The largest decrease in new weekly cases was reported in Africa, 43%, followed by the Eastern Mediterranean, 21%, Southeast Asia, 19%, the Americas, 12%, and the Western Pacific, 12%. The number of confirmed cases reported globally is now over 234 million, with fatalities just under 4.8 million. A large decline in the number of new weekly deaths was also reported for all regions except the Americas and Europe. These regions both reported a similar number of weekly deaths as the previous week. The largest decline in weekly deaths was reported from Africa, with a 25% decline compared with the previous.
Number of confirmed cases reported globally is now over 234 million, with fatalities just under 4.8 million. A large decline in the number of new weekly deaths was also reported for all regions except the Americas and Europe, as these regions both reported a similar number of weekly deaths as the previous week. The largest decline in weekly death was reported from Africa, with a 25% decline compared with the previous week. All right, now lastly, with our foreign news, we head to Tanzania, as Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan has ordered the reduction of taxes on petroleum products to reduce costs passed onto the consumer. A press statement issued by a Directorate of Presidential Communication Unit says the president made the decision to prevent the hiking of fuel prices, which would hurt Tanzanians. Here are the details.
Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan ordered reduction of taxes imposed on fuel totaling 102 billion Tanzanian shillings annually. This will effect reduced costs passed on to consumers. The head of state gave the directive after receiving an implementation report from the Energy Minister, January Makamba, and holding a meeting in Dodoma with Attorney General and Ministers of Energy, Works and Transport, Industry and Trade, Local Government and Regional Administration. President Samia had earlier asked Minister Makamba to compile a report on fuel business and their related prices in the country. A press statement issued by the Directorate of the Presidential Communication Unit and signed by its director, Hafa Haniu, said that the president made the bold decision to prevent the hiking of the fuel prices, which would hurt Tanzanians. The institutions which are directly concerned with the reduction of the taxes are the Energy and Water Utility Regulatory Authority, Tanzania Ports Authority, Tanzania Bureau of Standards, Weighty and Measures Agency. A press statement issued by the Directorate of the Presidential Communication Unit says the president made the decision to prevent the hiking of the fuel prices, which would hurt Tanzanians.
Head of State gave the directive after receiving an implementation report from Energy Ministry, January Makamba, and holding it in a meeting in Dodoma with the Attorney General and Ministers of Energy, Works and Transport, Industry and Trade, Local Government and Regional Administration. President Samia had earlier asked Minister Makamba to compile a report on fuel business and their related prices in the country. A press statement issued by the Directorate of Presidential Communication Unit and signed by its Directorate, Hafa Haniu, said that the president made the bold decision to prevent the hiking of fuel prices, which would hurt the Tanzanians. That brings us to the end of our news hour. I'll be right back.